In this video, I'm going to introduce you to Illustrator and what you need to be able to complete your symmetry asymmetry assignment. Please, before you start the assignment, make sure you have done the reading, which is chapters 1 and 2 in the Elements of Graphic Design. That's going to give you all of the concepts and terminology that you're going to need to be able to create these different patterns. So I'm going to jump over to Illustrator, and I already have some stuff set up, so I will go back a step and start from the beginning. If you're just opening up Illustrator, you would look for the option for New and move over to Art and Illustration. Again, I'm working from the latest version, the 2017, so yours may look slightly different, but basically you're looking to create a new document, and we want to put this, when we are going to do this in inches, so you could print this out if you wanted to. I want it to be horizontal, so it's going to be 11 inches by 8.5, so that's a standard paper size. But what's a little bit different about Illustrator is it has an option called artboards, and essentially that just means I could create multiple documents of the same size all within one document, or pages is another way you could think of them. So for this, I want to create 4 separate artboards, which is really the same as saying I'm creating 4 separate 11 by 8.5 inch documents, all within this one. I'm going to leave the rest of the settings. It already set the orientation to be horizontal. All of this is good, and I'll hit create. Alright, so this shows me my 4 artboards, and I could zoom in just like I could in Photoshop, and same keyboard shortcuts to zoom out as well, the Alt key. I can also use the space bar to switch to a hand tool. You can also grab the hand tool from the toolbar, but the hand tool can be really convenient. Let's say I'm really zoomed in on just one of my artboards, and now I want to go to the one below. I hold the space bar down and I can click and drag to the one below it. Okay, but I am going to zoom out a little. So the first thing I want you to do is to set some guides up, and we're going to have 4 practices for each one of these pages. So we're going to use the guides to help us with our alignment on the grid. So I want the guides to be set for 3/4 inch margin on the left and the right of each one of these, and a 1/2 inch margin on the top and the bottom, again for each one of these. So to set our guides, we need to see our rulers. This is just like in Photoshop. I'm going to go to View, Rulers, Show Rulers, and you want to make sure that this is your 0, 0 point on the top ruler and the horizontal one. If it's not, you could take and drag the top corner right in there, and you drag it right to the top, and it will set this to be 0, 0. Now this is 1 inch right here. I can't really see where my 3/4 inches will be, so I do need to zoom in. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and now I can see where 3/4 of an inch will be. And just like in Photoshop, to create my guides, I click into my top ruler. So this is going to be the guide that is for a 1/2 inch, and I'm aligning it with the ruler on the side. So here's my 1/2 inch mark. Okay, I'm going to use my hand key to bring me back. It sort of took me off a little, and that created a guide going all the way across. I'll do the same. I'm just going to move my artboard down. I'm going to create a 1/2 inch guide down here. So again, clicking onto my ruler, and I'm dragging it down, and I'm using the vertical ruler over here to find my 1/2 inch mark. And let's do another one. So here's my 1/2 inch, and I'll now move on to the vertical ones. So I want these to be 3/4, and I'm dragging from the vertical ruler over, and I'm aligning it with the horizontal one that's on the top just to use as my guide, and it lets go. Alright, so you want to follow through and do that for all of them, all 4. So this is the end result, how they should look. All 4 of them should have their guides. And now we're ready to start setting up for this practice. So what we're going to do is we want to create 4 boxes on each one of these artboards, and then within each box you're going to create a symmetrical or asymmetrical pattern. But to be able to see if it's symmetrical or asymmetrical, it needs to be contained within its own space. So that's why we're creating these boxes. The tools that we're going to be using for all of this practice will be here, in the shape tools. We're going to start with the rectangle tool. And what we want to create is a box that is only a stroke, so it's only an outline, but it doesn't have anything, any color for the fill, for the middle. So I'm going to go to the intersecting point. I hover over the two guides where they intersect and it tells me. And I'm going to click and drag down. And I want this square to be 4 inches by 3.5. And as I'm moving, you can see it's telling me its size, its width, and its height. I want it to be 4 by 3.5. And so I can keep kind of moving it until I get that exactly. Or I can let go. And then I can go up here into the options bar and I can set it. I am making sure that my constrained width and height proportions is off. And I can set this, I can delete that and just set it to 4.0. So that will be exactly 4 inches. Click over into this field and set this one, my height, to be 3.5. And notice it doesn't change until I've clicked out of the field. So if I have an active field, I need to click out, and I can click out down below, or I can just click into another field. And I now have the box the size I wanted. I want to duplicate and put 4 of these on each one. So to do that, I'm going to take my selection tool, which is keyboard shortcut V, just like the move tool in Photoshop, and I'm going to hold the Alt key down and click, oops, I didn't mean to drag that, Control Z to undo that, hold the Alt key down on my rectangle that I just made, and that's going to copy it, duplicate it over. And I'm dragging it over to the next intersection of the guides, and then same thing, hold the Alt key down and drag that over, and so on and so forth. Now I have all of my artboards set up. Each artboard has 4 separate boxes within it that I can use to create my symmetrical and asymmetrical patterns. Oh, looks like this one got a little bit off, and I'm just going to move it down. Okay, so to create the patterns, we're going to use the shapes over here, and you have the options to make the shape fill them with black, for example, and it doesn't have to have a stroke. You could have no stroke if you want. So I'm going to take the shape, I will take the ellipse tool, and if I want to make an ellipse or rectangle as a perfect circle or square, I hold the Shift key down, and I'm going to make a circle here. And at this point I want to zoom in, so I'm just working on this artboard. Remember, each artboard is actually 8.5 by 11. They're big, so there's no problem with just zooming in. And I'm going to take my selection tool again. This is just one example. This is not what you have to do. I'm just giving you an example of some things that you could do. I'm going to use my smart guides to line things up. There we go. It's now center aligned with that. Oh, and I duplicated at the same time. Didn't mean to do that. Create another one. Bring it down here. And notice as I'm doing this, I have my layers panel open. I want these both to intersect. There we go, they're intersecting. I have my layers panel open. We haven't really talked about layers yet in Illustrator. All of those lines and all of the guides that I created have been on this layer 1. And truthfully, it would have been better to separate the boxes onto one layer and the shapes onto another. And we'll do that for the next one. Okay, so here I have an example of symmetry. I have 4 circles and a square, but maybe I want to do something to make it a little bit more exciting. I'm going to switch over to the rectangle tool, and I'll make my fill white. Oh, so what I did right now was I was still selected on this shape, and when I changed my fill, it thought that I wanted to change the fill of this shape. So I'm going to undo that. And taking my selection tool, I'm going to deselect it by just clicking outside. I'm clicking into blank space, so now it's not selected. And now when I switch to a fill of white, it'll be on the shape that I've just selected. And I'm going to cut into all of these to change their shapes a little bit. And now to really see it, I'm going to click outside. So I'm not seeing that blue outline. And you can see how I've just taken something that was symmetrical and didn't really have any tension in the image, and now I've really implied some motion and have completely changed the image. Okay, so I'm going to close up my layers panel here. If you don't see your layers panel, it should be docked. Here is the second icon, or you could look for it under window. And to work on my second one, I'm going to create a new layer just for organization. And I'll use my move tool, my hand, and I'll move down, and now all of the shapes that I put onto this second one will be on its own layer. So maybe I want to take the polygonal, and if I don't hold the shift key down, it can move around like this. If I hold the shift key down, it locks its size. It locks it so it's upright. So no shift key, I can turn it around, and with the shift key, it stays locked. So this is going to come out white because that's what I had it set on, but it's still active, so I could change it, and it will apply to this. I could make additional ones, or I could take that selection tool and just click and drag holding that Alt key down and reproduce it. So I could make a whole other pattern here, maybe reproducing these shapes. Okay? So again, the only way you can do this assignment is if you did the reading and you really understand all the different types of symmetry and asymmetry that we have. So just to notice, these are all coming on their own layer, and it might help you just to be able to label them, because you will have a lot of layers, a lot of different shapes. So I could call this one Artboard 1, lower left corner, or something like that, or maybe coming up with an acronym abbreviation. Just like in Photoshop, I could toggle, I could turn it off. I can also open it up, and unlike in Photoshop, every shape has its own layer. So if I just wanted to turn off one, I could do that as well. Just before I finish, to point out the difference between the selection tool and the direct selection tool. So the selection tool, when I click on that, it selects the entire object and allows me to click it and drag it. Notice the object is actually made up of different points. They're called anchor points. So if I wanted to alter one of those, I'm going to take the direct selection tool, click on it, and I'll pick one of those anchors and drag it out, and now I can actually alter the shape of that original, of my original shape. I don't think you'd really want to do that for this practice, but I just wanted to point that out. Okay, so I'll zoom out here for a second, and what you're going to do is you're going to create 8 different ones that are going to be examples of symmetry. So 4 here, 4 over here, and then 8 ones that will be asymmetry. And then you're going to take the text tool, and this is just like in Photoshop. Anything that you want to change about the text tool, you can go up to the options bar, and oh, I think I have something selected. Let me just zoom in. It thinks I'm on this, so I'm going to deselect that by clicking into a different spot. Just zoom in a little bit and take my text tool. So again, I could go up here. It's going to be black text. I could change the font type and the font size. I think 12 will actually be okay. And type in what type of symmetry or asymmetry you have per example. All right, and I can move this down, try to make that, a little bit on the neater side. And then we'd want to line them all up, okay? So we're actually doing a lot of things here. We're talking about symmetry, we're talking about asymmetry, but at the same time we're talking about the grid, which is something we will be talking about a lot this semester, especially once we get towards like magazine layouts, grid, alignment, how everything interacts with each other. So all of those things are important as well. So lastly, we're going to save this as a PDF. You can save your Illustrator file if you think you're going to want to come back and work. Just like I said in Photoshop, I recommend saving it in 2 different file formats, one Photoshop, one JPEG. So the AI file is what you would use to go back to, and then what you're going to use for submitting will be the PDF. And probably want to save it in your graphic design folder, and you would call this the symmetry asymmetry practice. Hit save. And pretty much you can just say save PDF to all of these, and then that's it. Alright, hopefully this gives you everything you need to know for that second homework assignment.